Did you witness any disc technology at Area 51?
No, there was absolutely no ET craft, ET technology, anything like that at Area 51. This is why S4 was made specifically to separate it there. People at Area 51 do not have the clearance.
So he seemed to access the appropriate area of his brain, and we're also now seeing more stress.
How long were you employed at S4, and when were you hired?
When was I hired at S4? I guess early '89.
So you see him take his deep breath in after this question. He searches the brain, and it's an underlying stress now because of the stuff that started to happen to him. Now he's going to carry the stress, and it will always be there.
And I was probably there.
Oh, and he's just trying to relax into the question. Because when you carry underlying stress, you have to loosen up first.
Only about 6 months or so, on a very infrequent basis.
How were you transported to and from work?
At the time that I was working there at McCarran International Airport.
Then you see him literally squished down. He's like, okay, I'm into it now. I can relax. So at the time, he goes into it.
In Las Vegas, there was a Special Projects EG&G building. When I was told to go to work, I drove there, parked my car there, and got in a plane at the airport, flew to Groom Lake, where I deplaned and waited for a bus, and the bus drove me down to S4. The S4 facility is an area just off the Papoose lake bed, dry lake bed, and it consists of 9 hangars. The hangars have sloped doors on them with a sand texture coating. Around the opposite end of the hangars, there's the standard entrance where you're dropped off at, go through a security check, and inside there's a small complex. There's some office space, there's several laboratories, the hangars themselves, of course, and a few other places. I didn't have free rein to go wherever I wanted to. Everywhere I went to, I was essentially escorted, so that was really all about that I saw.
Inside the facility, what was the basic layout? Were there underground levels?
I don't think there were any underground levels to it, though there could have been. I don't think it was, an extensive underground facility. It just looked like an installation that was butt up against a mountain. And, I didn't see any evidence of any stairs going down, elevators, or, but like I said, I don't know. There could have been, and I just might not have been permitted in those areas. It's difficult to really surmise how long it had been operational. Everything did look fairly new. By that I mean I don't think this installation was there in the early 70s. Nothing was worn. Things looked fairly freshly painted. So, as a ballpark guess, I would say it would really surprise me if the installation was older than 5, 7, 10 years, something like that.
The scientists killed in the project. What exactly happened there?
Allegedly, obviously, I didn't see this, and I don't know it to be fact, but this is what I was told, that I was hired to replace one of a couple people that were killed while working on one of the reactors from one of the crafts. Apparently, they, for whatever reason, cut open an operating reactor, and the device exploded, killing both of them. The scientists that were killed there, allegedly the detonation from the explosion was fairly large. It would have rivaled a small tactical nuke. So it was done at the Nevada test site, and it was to be passed off as an unannounced nuclear test.
Did you have any direct contact or communication with aliens?
No, not at all.
Tell us about the briefing files. Under what conditions did you gain access to them?
I was put into the briefing room with 121 or 22 briefings, and really was just told to sit and read through them. I think they were there just to mainly educate me on what was going on. They weren't a complete in-depth explanation on everything else, but just essentially a brief synopsis on some of the other projects that were going on there. Supposedly, the information, now this isn't something that I determined, it's something I was told, that the crafts originated from a planet.
So you see him as he's answering where these supposed crafts came from, and he's telling you he was told. And so you see him filtering it through, because I'm sure it wasn't, they come from this place, and that was it. I'm sure it took many more sentences and words to explain that.
Orbited the Zeta Reticuli star system. Zeta Reticuli 1 and Zeta Reticuli 2 are two stars of a binary star system. The craft allegedly came from there. One or two autopsy photographs I saw dealt with just a small photograph, a bust shot essentially, just head, shoulders, and chest of an alien where the chest was cut open in T fashion and one single organ was removed. The organ itself in the other picture was cut and vivisectioned essentially. Showing the different chambers in there. This was totally unrelated to anything I was doing, but from that photograph it looked like what you see in UFO lore as the typical gray. So how tall it was from what I could see, I couldn't tell because I only saw a portion of the photograph, but if everything else you see is correct, I would imagine it was 3.5 or 4 feet tall. But there again, all I had to see was a photograph, and I didn't have much to go on.
So there you see, he's relaxed into this interview, and even though we only really see the neck up and the top of the shoulders, his body sings with him. He really saw an alien.
What was the size of the staff working on Project Galileo?
Well, there were 22 people employed there totally.
And that was specifically for the Galileo project?
No, for the entire project.
Oh, I see.
There were 22 people with majestic clearance. I had majestic clearance. Majestic clearance was designated as clearance 38 levels above Q clearance, and Q clearance is the civilian top secret clearance.
When did you see your first disc?
The first disc I saw, I believe it was the second, or I think it was the third time I was up there. Normally the bus pulled around to the opposite end of the facility, which was the main entrance, and that's where we went in. On this particular occasion, it pulled up to one of the hangar doors, which were normally closed, and the last one was open. We came out, and I saw the disc in the hangar. Upon seeing it, it struck me that, well, this explains all the UFO sightings. Not thinking that it was an extraterrestrial craft, that this must have been some advanced form of fighter that we've been working on for years, and, people have just caught it being tested, so on and so forth. And it never even occurred to me, even though I was looking at an extraterrestrial vehicle, that, this wasn't man-made.
When did you realize the craft was not of earthly origin?
Well, it probably really hit me when I got inside the craft and looked around and began to understand how the craft was operated, and finally grasped the whole project as a whole, as what we were doing, the fact that we weren't building this thing, we were trying to find out how it was made. We were back engineering it.
What is back engineering?
Well, back engineering is taking a finished product and finding out how the device or product was produced, and essentially determining whether or not you can duplicate it.
Now, scientists aside, what was your emotional response? What were you thinking were the implications to the world or man in general from these revelations?
I really didn't think about implications of that sort. As far as emotionally, people have asserted that, boy, that must have been the most exciting time in your life, and that's not the way it was. When I first got to look inside the craft, all I can say, it's an ominous feeling. You walk in there, and it feels as if you shouldn't be there. I know that sounds kind of corny, but it's a real ominous feeling. It's not an exciting feeling. It brings up a whole lot of questions in your mind. Well, where did this come from? And you know that they won't give you the answers to the whole story, but that's the only way I can describe it.
Again, his body sings with him.
It produces a gravity wave, which is similar to the gravity wave that the Earth produces. However, the craft phase shifts the wave. In other words, it turns the wave not really in an opposite polarity, but something to that effect, where it will work against the natural gravity wave of the Earth, and it produces lift in that effect.
Is there any internal protection for the crew? Does the craft generate a gravitational field inside the craft itself?
Well, the craft generates its own gravitational field. Being inside that field essentially doesn't shield you, but essentially you're in, and this is a terrible way to say it, almost in a different realm, because you're now influenced only by that gravitational field. For instance, people wonder how a craft like this can make a turn at such high speed, a 90-degree turn, when they would imagine people slamming up against the wall or something to that effect. Well, that really wouldn't happen. Inertia would have no effect. You're in a distortion. And don't forget that gravity distorts time and space, so really nothing is going to influence you while you're in there.
What is element 115? Is it found here on Earth, or is it strictly an extraterrestrial material?
115 is strictly an extraterrestrial material. It probably occurs naturally in some other places, maybe other star systems. Some people not familiar with science or chemistry say, well, that's ridiculous, all the elements occur on Earth, you know. But that's not true. There are elements on the periodic chart that aren't found on Earth. I believe the Heavy Ion Research Lab in Darmstadt, Germany, has reached element 112 recently. So 115 isn't that far away. And when they synthesize it, it's not like they're making a couple ounces of it. They're talking about 1 or 2 atoms of it. To make any usable quantity of a heavy element like that is virtually impossible. Element 115 is in the top of the reactor. And the base of the reactor apparently is a small, something similar to a cyclotron. It's a particle accelerator. A particle is accelerated to high speed and then deflected up a small tube, and it's aimed at the 115. This transmutes the 115, similar to the way we do that in a normal particle accelerator. This causes a reaction, a radiation emission that we really haven't seen before. It produces antimatter. This antimatter is guided down a tuned tube and reacts with a gas. When matter and antimatter react, they convert to 100% energy. This energy is converted, heat energy, is converted to electrical power in the reactor itself. This is done through a thermoelectric converter. And this electrical power is used to power other subsystems on the craft, though there is no wiring, you know, as we would know it. Also, that's almost a byproduct of the reactor. The reactor also sets up a gravitational wave from the 115 being bombarded. This gravitational wave was present at the top of the reactor and is essentially guided in the same way microwaves are guided, through tuned tubes. And this goes to their amplifying cavities and through the projectors that are in the bottom of the craft.
With the gravity generators running, is there thermal radiation danger to the crew?
There is no thermal radiation while the reactor is running. The thermionic generator is 100% efficient, which is in violation of the first law of thermodynamics. But in fact, it works. Element 115 is stable. And for those familiar with chemistry, we know that elements with higher atomic numbers have shorter and shorter half-lives. However, when you reach a certain point, they call it the island of stability. There is a place, and we've theorized this for a long time, somewhere around 114 to 116, there should be an area in there where the nucleus of the atom is geometrically stable with protons and neutrons, where it no longer decays. It's not radioactive. 115 is, in fact, this element. In fact, it does occur again somewhere around element 247. Of course, you know, we're nowhere near synthesizing that. We can only, you know, predict things like that. But that's where 115 is.
Did they, the aliens, give us element 115 in large quantities
Whether or not it was given to us, I can't answer that question. However, I was told that we have 500 pounds by one of my coworkers. How it was obtained and where exactly it came from, I don't know. Whether it came in one of the crafts or it was separate cargo somewhere. Anyone can speculate, but I was told that was the figure.
You were able to get away with a sample of element 115. How much did you get away with?
No comment.
I wish we'd actually gotten to see more of that part, like as he's asking the question and the brain computes what's being asked. But instead, all we got to see is no comment, tight-lipped. Obviously, he got some 115. Nobody says no comment, especially with the personality that he's been displaying of honesty, if they had not have taken it.
Lazar has remained silent for 30 years until now. He recounts his story to Jeremy Corbell in a new film called Bob Lazar, Area 51 and Flying Saucers. All right, Jeremy, all these years later, why'd you do this film?
My mentor in journalism is a man named George Knapp. And actually, George Knapp broke the story with Bob in 1989, and he's been great to me and helped me open the story back up. And Bob was willing, after 30 years, to let me make the first documentary film ever on his story.
Why did you agree to do it, Bob?
Well, there's a lot of weird stories, incorrect information, and strange comments that's been passed around the internet for decades.
Now here we see Bob much older, many, many decades. And you're noticing he's not as loose as he was when he was young. He sits now with his hands clasped together. He's guarded. He's always hunched over now. The quote-unquote fight has taken its toll.
And it just kind of reached a point where it was time to set something straight.
So this film sets it. Are you happy with the film?
Yeah, I am.
It wasn't a smooth road, though.
No,
Why?
That's correct.
Because, look, this brought back up to Bob, whether you believe his story or not, which I don't think he cares anymore, it brought back up all these feelings and emotions. It wasn't a good time for him. The UFO subject has not been good to Bob. You watch my film, you see what he's gone through.
Why, is he laughed at?
I don't know if he cares he's laughed at, but I think that people just get it wrong. So they've been propagating a mythology about an important story.
All right, Bob, what happened to you?
Well, in 1989, I was hired by, actually it was EG&G where I got the job. And it was the Department of Naval Intelligence that actually employed me. And our job was to back engineer an alien spacecraft that was housed at Area S4, which is just south of Area 51. In that job, my specific task was...
And you notice as he does this, and we've seen him do this, we've already seen him retell this story, but now he's more stressed. His movements are smaller. His shoulders and his spine aren't as flexed. Now, some of that you could say, oh, it's just old age. Well, depending on his health, yes, you could say that. But he's not showing the telltale signs of arthritis, so I'm going to say no. It's that underlying stress that now has carried on for decades that has now become part of him.
Okay.
How big were the spacecrafts from Area 51 that the reverse engineering was done on?
I think it was about 52 feet in diameter.
So even after all these years, he still references his visual on this spacecraft. He remembers, and it was quick.
And approximately how many beings could these spacecraft hold?
3.
Boy, someday we'll have all the answers.
I hope so. Thank you, Larry. Thank you.
Thank you,
you.
Bob.
And just as quick with that answer. Unfortunately, we don't get to actually see as that question is being answered or asked. And it's always nice to see someone as the information is filtering into the brain, what it does and how they react to it, and not just the response. Because, if you're a deceptive person, it comes through, you're already thinking up your deception, and then you respond.
I would like to thank the sponsor of this video, Firo. Firo is one of the few cryptocurrency projects that I respect. Unlike most other cryptocurrencies, Firo is focused on safeguarding your financial privacy without compromising on trustlessness, which means no third parties are required, and transactions are private by default. Firo also has an exciting roadmap to look forward to. Features such as Instant Send, where payments can both be sent and confirmed within seconds. There's also Elysium, which adds tokenization functionality similar to Ethereum, but it also enables these assets to enjoy Fearo's privacy technology. There's many more things on the roadmap, and if you'd like to learn more, head over to fearo.org. If you'd like to learn more about analysing body language, there is a video course available on Mandy's website for Gold subscribers, where Mandy teaches more about her techniques of deception detection. There's also other content such as the Crime series and Interesting Minds series, available to both Gold and Silver subscribers.
If you like it, please share and subscribe. Thanks for watching.